Welcome back to the Forgive Yourself podcast. I am your host, Brenda Reese. Today, we're talking about something that so many women carry quietly all the time. But it's a topic that came up in recent conversation because we were talking about Mother's Day. And the topic that we were all referencing is mother guilt. Yeah, you probably don't have that, but a lot of women do. Now, I'm not just talking the guilt that comes from looking back and wondering if you said the right thing, did enough, showed up enough, or made the right choices. We're also talking about the guilt that can show up right now in the middle of daily life. The guilt that comes when you finally sit down and feel like you should be doing something for someone else, right? Or the guilt that comes when you need space, but someone needs you and you, have that feeling. The guilt that comes when you lose your patience and you immediately wish you could take it back. The guilt that comes when you are physically present, but emotionally exhausted. The guilt that comes when you are trying to care for your children, your aging parents, your work, your relationship, your home, and somewhere in there, which doesn't happen, is yourself. Because for many women, mother guilt is not just about parenting. It's about identity. It's about expectations. It's about the pressure to get everything right. It's about the grief of what you wish you had done differently. And it's also about the ache of wondering whether you're doing enough today. Sometimes it's about trying to mother from places inside of you that were never fully mothered. So if you've ever found yourself thinking, I should have done better. I should be more patient. I should be more present. I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I could be softer. I wish I hadn't felt so resentful. Or I hope my children know I love them. Then I want you to take a breath with me right now. Because this episode is not here to shame you, because we've all had those, right? We're human. This episode is not here to tell you just to let it go. If you've been around long enough, you know, we don't do that. It's here to gently open a door toward understanding, compassion, and maybe even just a little self-forgiveness. Because you are not failing as a mom. You may simply be carrying too much. So let's begin by talking about why does mother guilt feel so personal? Mother guilt, if you have it, feels heavy, doesn't it? And it's usually because it's tied to our deepest sense of self-worth. For many women, being a good mother is not just something we want. It becomes something we measure ourselves by, right? And the problem with this is that the measuring stick keeps frickin' moving, right? You can be present and still wonder if you're present enough. You can provide and still wonder if you're emotionally available enough. You can sacrifice and still wonder if you're giving the wrong things. You can love your children deeply and still feel haunted by the moments when you were exhausted, overwhelmed, angry, shut down, or stretched too thin. And this can happen whether your children are young, teenagers, or grown adults. Trust me, I have grown adult children. Mother guilt doesn't always end when the children grow up. Most of the time, it just changes shape. When they are young, you may feel guilty for working or resting or needing time alone, being distracted, or not enjoying every moment. When they are teenagers, you may feel guilty for not knowing how to reach them, not understanding what they're going through, or wondering if you're being too strict or too lenient, or how do I protect them, especially these days. When they are adults, you may feel guilty for what you didn't know then, what you see now happening because of the way you parented, or the relationship that feels different than you hoped it would be. And this is where guilt becomes more than just guilt. It can become shame. It becomes a story in our minds that tell us, I'm not doing enough. I should be different. If my child struggles, it must be my fault, or what I did was really wrong. And this story can feel unbearable. Because when you love someone deeply, especially our children, we want to protect them from pain. And we also don't want them to go through what we did, right? In all honesty. And when we see them struggle, or when we notice our own limits, our reactions, our own regrets, it can touch something very, very tender. So here is where I gently want to offer you something to think about. Guilt may point to something you care about, but it does not get to define who you are. Okay? Let's repeat that. Guilt may point to something you care about, which is important, but it does not get to define who you are. Guilt can show you that something matters, but shame tries to convince you that you are the problem. And there, my friend, is a huge difference. Because guilt says, I wish I had done that differently, right? But shame says, I am a bad mother. Guilt says, I want to show up with more love today than I did yesterday, right? Shame says, I am failing. Guilt invites repair. Shame keeps you stuck in punishment. And many women are not actually healing from mother guilt because they are still using shame as the tool. They keep replaying the past. They keep judging the present. They keep measuring themselves against an impossible version of motherhood. Anybody say amen on that one? But shame does not create healing. You know what does? Compassion does. Truth does. And self-forgiveness does. One of the things I've learned in the forgiveness work is that what we judge ourselves for on the surface is often connected to something really deep underneath. So when a woman says, I feel guilty as a mother to me, I know that there's many layers underneath that. She may be grieving the years when she was just trying to survive. I relate to that. Or she may be in a season right now where she is trying to keep up with more than one person can realistically hold. Relate to that? She may be carrying guilt from a divorce, losses of other relationships, an illness, financial stress, work stress, addiction in the family, her own addiction maybe, her caregiving responsibilities, emotional overwhelm, or simply the constant pressure of being needed. That is a lot. She may be looking back and realizing I was doing the best I could, but I'm realizing now that my best came from a very wounded place. Or she may be looking at her life today and thinking, I am doing the best I can, and I still feel like it isn't enough. Both are very painful places because sometimes we don't fully understand what we were carrying until much later. And sometimes we are so busy carrying it now that we don't even realize how heavy it has become. You may think you are just being strong. You may think you are holding everything together. You may think you are protecting everyone by pushing through. And you may think you have no other choice. And maybe in some ways, it feels like you don't. So when we talk about mother guilt, we also have to talk about the woman underneath the role of mother. This is important. So I'd really like you to stop a second and listen. I'd love you to hear this. Right? We have to talk about the woman underneath the role of mother. This is a big one, and this is something that I've been looking at. Who am I underneath the roles, not just of mother, but of everything else, the wife and the sister and the friend, right? Okay, so who is this woman underneath the role of mother? She's a woman who has needs. She's a woman who is tired. She's a woman who feels lonely. She's a woman who is scared. She's a woman who has her own childhood wounds. And she's a woman who may not have the support or the tools or emotional safety that she needs. Because you are not only a mother, you are also a beautiful human being. And I think us women forget that. You know, we see ourselves as if we should be endlessly patient, endlessly available, endlessly wise, endlessly calm, endlessly forgiving, and endlessly giving. But no one can mother from an empty nervous system forever. No one can give what they never received without eventually feeling the cost. It's like, have you ever heard the saying, you're like a teapot that's being poured out but never refilled? No one can carry generations of pain, family expectations, emotional labor, and personal grief without some of it spilling over. Now, this is not about making excuses. This is about making room for the whole truth. And the whole truth sounds like this. I wish some things had been different. And I am doing the best I can today. I make mistakes. And I love deeply. I have caused pain at times. And I have also been in pain. I can take responsibility where it is mine to take responsibility for. And I can stop punishing myself today. This is the space where healing begins. And I want to say this gently because some part of you may need to hear it. You are not only a mother, you are a woman with needs, desires, grief, limits, wisdom, and a life that still belongs to you. That doesn't make you selfish in a bad way at all. It doesn't mean you love your children less. It means your humanity did not disappear when you became a mother. And maybe part of the guilt you've been carrying comes from forgetting that you were never meant to disappear inside the role of mother. You were meant to love. You were meant to nurture. You were meant to guide, but you were never meant to abandon yourself in order to prove that love. Oh, my friend, whew, that was a lot. Let's take a breath together. Whew, I see you and I feel you. Okay, now that we understand where all this guilt comes from, or at least some of where it comes from, we didn't even get into all the societal and generational expectations around mother guilt. That's for another conversation. Right now, I'd like to talk about some steps that we can take to guide us in this healing process. Sound good? All right. This first step is to gently separate guilt from shame. It's an important one. So I'd like you to take a moment and ask yourself, what am I actually feeling guilty about? Now, this sounds simple, but it's not. I want you to take a few moments. Yes, you have a few. And I want you to get specific. Okay? Not I'm a terrible mom or I yell at my kids. Okay? I'm a terrible mom. I yell at my kids. I don't get things done. Okay, that's shame. How about trying this? Here are some sentence stems that you could use. I wish I had listened more to, and name your child. I wish I had apologized sooner to, and name your child or the person. I wish I had been more emotionally present with, name them. I wish I had not been so reactive when, and name the situation. I wish I had taken better care of myself, and you can be more specific on that one. Or maybe what you're feeling guilty about is happening right now, right? So those could have been from the past. But for right now, may sound like I feel guilty that I need time alone. I feel guilty that I'm tired of being needed, and you can be more specific. I feel guilty that I feel resentful about, and name the circumstance. I feel guilty that I don't know how to fix and name whatever the situation is, emotional, physical, mental. I feel guilty that I want a life outside of being a mother. I feel guilty that I'm not enjoying this season of my life the way I thought I would. Now, when you name the specific thing, you bring it out of the fog of shame. And once it's specific, it becomes something you can tend to. Maybe there's a repair to make. Maybe there's a conversation that needs to be had. Maybe there's a boundary to set. Maybe there's rest that's long overdue. Maybe there's grief to feel. That's a big one. Maybe there's simply a younger version of you who needs compassion. So, do you see the difference between just saying, I'm a bad mom, and then being specific? Because when you keep it general, it doesn't allow for a path forward. It keeps you stuck. So, step one is name what you feel guilty about without turning it into your identity. No shame, please. You can say, I regret that moment of blank. I feel stretched thin right now because of blank. I wish I had handled this situation differently. I need support in blank, or I am at my limit. Sometimes there's no explanation. We just know. But we do all that without adding, and that means I'm a failure, because it doesn't. It means you are a beautiful human being. All right. The second step is to tell the truth about what you were carrying then or what you are carrying now. This is not to excuse any harm, right? We're not excusing harm. This is to understand context, because healing requires truth. And truth includes the circumstances you were in and the circumstances you may still be in. All right. So we're telling the truth about what you were carrying before or what you are carrying now. So take a moment and ask yourself, okay, this is before. What was happening in my life during that season that we feel guilty about? Or what is happening in my life right now? Right? All the things, name all the things. What is happening? What are the circumstances? What support did I have? Or what support do I have now? Be honest, be truthful. The support that you don't have, the support you do have. Okay. What support do I need? Now that's important. That one can take a while. What am I willing to believe I have to carry alone? What wounds or patterns are shaping my choices? What do you know about a wound? Because a lot of us have an idea of a pattern that, where no one else can do it the right way. I can't be vulnerable. Otherwise, I'll be taken advantage of. Right? So a lot of us know what our patterns or wounds are. Another question is, what do I know now that I didn't know then? And what am I learning now that I may not have fully integrated yet? Now, this matters because many of us women judge our past selves from our current awareness. Got that? We judge our past selves from what we know today. That's not fair. And many of us women judge our current selves as if they should have already mastered everything. They're still learning. Okay, come on. Who's guilty of that one? I'm going to say I am guilty of that. Okay. We're learning to not feel guilty, but I know that still pops up for me. And you may look back and think, I should have known better. Or you may look at yourself today and think, I should be doing better by now. But healing is not instant just because you have awareness. That's only the first step. You can understand a pattern and still be learning how to change it. You can know you need boundaries and still feel scared to set them. You can know rest matters and still feel guilty taking it. Doesn't mean you don't. And you can know your children are not responsible for your emotions and still feel activated when they pull away, criticize you, or struggle. This is why compassion matters, because there is a difference between accountability and cruelty. Accountability says, I can see this clearly now and I can choose differently. Cruelty says, I should already be perfect at this. I should know what I'm doing. I can do this without help. That's not healing, my friend. That is self-attack. So this step is about telling a fuller truth, not just I made mistakes, but also add to that, I feel overwhelmed. I feel unsupported. Let's name it. I feel afraid. I feel tired. I am still learning. I am trying to love them without abandoning myself. Or I thought being a good mother meant disappearing into everyone else's needs. And when we can do that, then maybe for the first time, you can say, God, no wonder this feels so darn heavy. Just that recognition alone can bring you some relief. So now the fourth step is to practice repair only where repair is possible. Because sometimes guilt is asking for action, not punishment, but action. Maybe there is a conversation that needs to happen. Maybe there is an apology that would be healing that you can give. Maybe there is a way to listen differently now. Or maybe there is a boundary you need to set. Or maybe there is a boundary you need to respect with your child or adult child. Maybe repair looks like you are no longer defending yourself when they tell you how something you said or did made them feel. It's a big one. And maybe repair looks like just catching yourself sooner. So here are some ideas you can use when you catch yourself. Okay, if you catch yourself, you can say, I'm sorry. I was overwhelmed and I didn't speak the way I wanted to, right? Or if you start to say something, catch yourself, you can say, let me try this again. Or if you're upset, you can say, I need a moment to calm myself, but I do want to come back to this because you never leave anyone hanging. You can say, I love you and I'm listening, and really listen without giving anything back. You can say, I can see that my reaction was bigger than this moment warranted. That's being willing to take accountability and responsibility. Yet repairing does not mean you take responsibility for everything. Hear me out. Repairing does not mean you take responsibility for everything. And it does not mean you collapse into shame. Repair can sound like, I've been thinking about that time. If we're talking about something in the past, I've been thinking about that time, and you can be specific, and I can see now how hard that may have been for you. Or I'm sorry I wasn't able to hear you then. I wish I had handled that differently, and that's it. We don't give any excuses after these. It's just, I wish I had handled it differently. I'm learning to see things with more honesty now. And I love you and I'm open to listening. That alone, I love you and I'm open to listening, and then follow through with that, can be the best gift you give yourself and your children. Now, this is tender because sometimes repair is welcomed and sometimes it's not. Sometimes your child may not be ready. Sometimes the relationship may not have the capacity for the conversation you want to have. I know I've had to do that with my adult children, and I have had to wait. When I was apologizing for my drinking days, right? And sometimes the relationship doesn't have the capacity for the conversation that I want to have, and I have to honor that. It's the best gift that I can give myself and them. Because sometimes the repair that is needed needs to happen privately inside of yourself first. But where repair is possible, I want it to be clean. Let it be clean. Not an apology that asks that the other person comfort you. Not an apology that says, I'm sorry, but. And not an apology that tries to erase the impact. This is a big one. It's not saying, I did the best I could. Yes, you did. But at this point in time, it's about listening, right? And I'll do better. Just a simple, honest ownership of what we can own is really important. And then giving them room. This is emotional maturity. And it is also part of self-forgiveness, because self-forgiveness is not pretending nothing happened. It is choosing to meet what happened with truth, compassion, and a willingness to grow. And our last step, the fifth step, is to offer compassion to the mother you were and to the mother you are right now. This may be the hardest one, because many women can offer compassion to everyone else before they offer it to themselves, right? Can you relate? Whew, yeah. I've had to do that recently. And there are some stuck places that I have that I still continue to work, right? It's a work in progress. If you can, take a moment right now. I want you to imagine the version of you from a hard season of life, from a challenging time. Was she younger? Was she scared? Maybe she was exhausted. Was she trying to keep the family together? Was she working too much? Maybe she was grieving. Was she in a painful relationship? Maybe she was trying to be strong for everyone else because she didn't know that there was another option. Can you see her? Can you feel her? And now I want you to see the woman you are today. The woman who is still trying, the woman still loving, still learning, still carrying responsibilities, the woman still wanting to get it right, and the woman who may be tired in ways no one sees. Can you see her too? Can you feel her? Not as the woman you want to judge, but as the woman who needs your support. What would you say to her now? Some ideas could be, I see how hard you are trying. Way to go. High five, right? I see how much you love those kids. I see how tired you are. I see that you are carrying more than anyone understands. And a big one for most of us is, I'm not here to punish you anymore. Now, this doesn't erase the past, and it doesn't make the present magically easy, but it does change the relationship you have with yourself, and that's the only thing that really matters. Because when you keep punishing yourself, you stay tied to the very version of yourself you are trying to forgive. Remember, we can't go forward if we're staying stuck. And when you bring compassion, you begin to loosen that grip of shame, that grip of the past. You begin to remember, I can be a woman who makes mistakes and still be a loving mother. I can have regrets and still be worthy of peace. I can take responsibility without living in shame. I can grow on my terms. I can repair when I'm ready. And I can forgive myself. As we come to a close today, I want to invite you, because this was a lot, to place a hand on your heart if that feels good to you. And just take a breath. And when you're ready, ask yourself, What part of my mother guilt is asking for compassion? Not correction, not punishment, not another reason to criticize yourself, but compassion. Maybe it's the part of you that was overwhelmed that needs compassion. Maybe the part of you that is overwhelmed today needs compassion. Maybe the part of you that didn't know better needs compassion. I know that was for me. I got to go back and give compassion to the different parts of me where she thought she should do better and know better. Maybe it's the part of you that is still learning that needs compassion. We are all still learning, by the way. Maybe the part of you that wishes you could go back needs compassion. Maybe the part of you that needs space or rest, support, or understanding needs compassion. And maybe the part of you that loves your children so much it hurts needs compassion. And maybe today, just for a moment, you can let yourself say, I was carrying a lot, or I am carrying a lot. I do not always get it right, and I am willing to meet myself with more kindness now. Because self-forgiveness does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop using shame as proof that you care. You can care deeply and still let yourself heal. You can love your children and stop abandoning yourself. You can regret something and still be worthy of peace. And you can still feel guilty today and choose a gentler response. You can. And you can begin again, even if the beginning is quiet, private, and only inside your own heart. Thank you for our time together today. I'm really glad you were here. And I know this was a lot. And I want you to know that you are worthy of being honest with yourself and others. You do not have to carry such a heavy weight if you don't want to. If this episode touched something in you, please share it with someone who may need a little more compassion around motherhood, guilt, and self-forgiveness. And remember, you don't have to carry all of this alone. And until next time, take care. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, would you do me a favor and share this episode and then follow us on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss one episode of the Forgive Yourself podcast, where every Friday you will get tips, tools, and stories so that you can turn your pain into peace. Take care.